spoštovani gostje in gosti, dobrodošli na Univerzi v Ljubljani in na dogodek namenjen spoznavanju in tudi učenju o inovacijskih stičiščih, ki smo ga pripravili skupaj z Nacionalnim inštitutom za biologijo, ki je dal pobudo, ki smo z veseljem sprejeli in seveda zato smo danes tukaj. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I will now switch to English because we have international guests. Mr. Dr. Luca Vitanen, welcome to the University of Ljubljana, and also welcome to the National Institute of Biology of Slovenia. It is really our pleasure to welcome you all here, especially the President of the Slovenian Academy of Science, Director of the Institute of Jožef Stefan, also Director Stani Pejovnik, and our Rector, all distinguished deans and guests from the ministries, agencies, and all other interested public, also from the companies, and of course, institutes of different institutes of knowledge and knowledge transfer. Let me first give a few words about who our guest is. And it is a pleasure when you read a book which actually presents the whole world. And this is the book called Hub Concepts. And it is the same name of the company which is run by Dr. Vitanen. It's called HubSpun Concepts Incorporation, based in Finland, however, very much focused on the development of different systems, eco-innovation systems, hubs, and different methods and concepts of developing knowledge transfer within societies, regions, and also globally all over the world. Dr. Vitanen has many experiences in Asia-Pacific area, being present in Japan for 12 years, 3 years in Australia, being also one of the consultants of, actually counselors of Tekes, which is one of the very important agencies in Finland developing technology and innovation and supporting the transfer of knowledge, and also one of the diplomats of the knowledge transfer, we can say, between Finland and Japan. So many, even more and more reasons to invite him right in this moment to Slovenia, because, as you already heard, we are not only trying but developing first steps of establishing Slovenian Innovation Hub being initiated by our Rector Stani Pejovnik, our previous rector, and the group of institutes, the group of companies, and all other supporters who feel that we need that, that such of elements and concepts and methods have to be also presented in Slovenian environment. Mr. Vitanen also worked quite a lot in ICT area, so biotechnology, healthcare fields, focusing predominantly on R&D commercialization and of course transfer of knowledge towards markets, innovation and society-driven development. Why is it even more important that we hear about such concepts and approaches? Because we can learn out of very good practices being developed all over the world, Europe and Asia and the States and on. And at the same time, being in the moment of creating the final document of the smart specialization, who is dealing a lot with exactly with innovation, value chains, networks, which can and will contribute to the knowledge development in Slovenia and industry, in Slovenia in science and industry. I think it is the right moment to listen to the ideas which have been already explored and defined around the world. But before we give the word to our guest, I would like to also welcome Professor Tamara Lach from the National Institute of Biology to share a few welcoming words with us and also ideas of how to develop these concrete ideas further. Welcome.
Good afternoon, distinguished guests and deans and all the audience. I would like to be very brief because I don't want to spend too much time and take the time from the discussion and from the interesting lecture. I would just like to tell about the background, how I met Dr. Vitanen. It was an occasion of Brazilian-European meeting on the transfer of technologies where various European countries and Brazil exchange their best practices in technology transfer. I happen to be the delegate for Slovenia, and I just explain the situation as it is at the moment in Slovenia, and moreover, what are our plans for future. I think that Maya Brencic already told you a little bit about that, how to build really new innovation center perhaps in Slovenia in the near future, and certainly we also hope that our politicians will share our vision, will share these ideas, and so we will hear about that and how possibly to do it from our lecture that I really welcome very much, and I hope you enjoy the lecture.
Well, I am today, nowadays, I'm an entrepreneur and business owner. I started the company about 5 years ago. But before that, for about 20 years, I've been doing different things related to innovation. And me and my colleagues at Hub Concepts, we came to this kind of a realization after traveling around the world for quite some time. Quite many politicians and decision makers, they talk about kind of a principal concept that my city or my university or my country is leading the world in X, Y, and Z. And typically they say that my research institute is #1 or my city is leading and all that kind of thing. And we were very curious and we visited many of those places. And we realized that many times this opening of good thought is not actually being materialized in the real world. And we started to think about this and we decided that something needs to be done. And for us it meant we have to start a company. Because as a government official or as a researcher, it's very difficult to deliver this message. So we established Hub Concepts. This is a company which has a quite rich background. We have visited hundreds and hundreds of science and technology parks, innovation centers, university campuses, incubation centers, and so on. We have been doing benchmark studies and projects with our clients in all of these countries. And the names are just increasing month by month. In our previous life and during running this company, we have had already over 100 assignments from different parties in relation to how do you develop these environments. And essentially we are consultants, but we tend to think that we are a little bit different to our competitors in the sense that we have actual hands-on experience how to do this in practice. My colleagues have been establishing 13 science and technology parks in Finland and a few in the neighboring countries. I was sent to set up a Finnish Science Center in Japan. Later on, I started Finnish Innovation Center in Japan. Later on, we used these models to spread to the different countries. So in this sense, we know how these parks and how these hubs actually can be developed from zero and how to make them work and successful. But we thought that it's not enough that we only refer to something that we know. And before we started this company, I spent 3 years of my free time writing this book. Book on global best practices, how do you actually develop these environments. And in this sense, we have a relatively long history how to do this. And now that we are doing this as a private business, this tells you how we are operating. So we are interested in transfer of best practice, or at least good practices, between different hubs and different countries and different campuses and so on. And how do we do this? We are continuously benchmarking the global best running environments. We analyze and model everyday management practice. We are not so much interested anymore about the background research or background studies, but while we are doing this work, we end up reading quite a lot of those as well. But in reality, through our projects, we are facing every day this practical, everyday management challenge, and we try to then analyze and model it, and then transfer it to our clients. Why do we do this? When we started our company, and after visiting hundreds and hundreds of science and technology parks, which was our starting point at one point, we realized that there are over 3,000 science and technology parks in the world, depending on how you count. And based on what we heard and what we read and what we saw, we claim that at least 90% of them is total rubbish. And this is the starting point. Why do we want to do this? Why it is difficult and why they are not producing the results that we are expecting from them. There is this kind of a dilemma built in this development, that innovation processes and infrastructure development do not meet very frequently in these contexts. And private sector participation is quite nominal. And all of you who have something to do with this kind of a thinking and this kind of a development, you probably realize quite quickly that there is some truth in this. We believe that by our work and with these projects that we have, we can help our partners and our clients to set up innovation platforms for creating new products and services, and we can improve innovation capacity and competencies. So, we wrote a book about it, and then we are doing different kinds of projects. The book was published in March 2011. We did it ourselves. Ever since we have been selling, I don't know, almost 2,000 copies for different kinds of organizations like World Bank and universities and national research institutes, and we have been using this in conferences as a reference material and all that kind of thing. But what do we actually then claim that these innovation hubs are for? So, we claim that the development of innovation hubs and different ways to organize collaboration is kind of a new tool that can be used as a growth engine. And in most economies, this is today one of the key topics. And it comes from this kind of idea. So, essentially, using different kinds of inputs, typically in econometric calculations, we are talking about labor and capital and other different kinds of means how to do this. We can improve productivity, and through those means, we can then reach economic growth, increase of exports, and so on and so on. And I'm not quite sure how well you're aware of the history of what has happened in Finland over the last 20-25 years. But in 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed, in one day we lost 40% of our export market, and the country that we all see and hear nowadays and think that it's some kind of an innovation frontrunner was basically bankrupt. Our politicians didn't have very many choices. They had to smash our national budgets, they had to lay off people from public sector companies went bankrupt, and so on and so on and so on. We had really, really dark times. And during those times, our national government and our political decision makers, they decided that there is only one way out. Extra investments to education, research, and technology development. And ever since, we have been participating very openly and very keenly discussion on how this new economic growth model can work and what are the new sources of economic growth. And from our point of view and from our experience point of view, we believe that this education, research and technology and different means and ways to organize the flows of knowledge and innovation to help the national economies to grow and get stronger provides us one possible solution how these things can be moved forward. What typically happens in national and regional economies is that when we think about this development of innovation ecosystem and these hubs, we start from year zero somewhere and we start studying this. Typically it means that, especially in younger developing nations, it takes several years to build the required preconditions for actual innovation to take place. Essentially, we are talking about capacity building, and we are talking about way to develop different tools within the innovation system of that country. And we build over time consensus on this willingness to utilize this potential and actively participate in the development of this ecosystem. Then after a certain time, depending on local conditions, several years, 5, 6, 7, whatever, we come to the point where the discussion on innovation hubs will start. That's in the middle of this picture there. Here. The discussion on hubs starts. And what typically happens then? Actors in this ecosystem, they come together and they start talking about these possibilities to do R&D collaboration, to build innovation capacities, start thinking about the commercialization processes, how do we bring this knowledge and know-how to the markets, and how do we then build different kinds of platforms where we can put all these acting together so that we get these results out, cluster programs, support for growth companies, and start building these environments, typically science parks and business incubators, where this ecosystem starts boosting their innovation activities and try to reach the results what I expected. From our point of view, we have been in the middle of this process for quite some time, and we take this kind of one step forward, still understanding that the basic building blocks are needed and it takes several years to build. But what I have, for example, heard in case of Slovenia, it sounds like that you have all these basic elements here, how to develop this local ecosystem and national innovation ecosystem and these hubs. So the next thing is that we start finding common understanding and common language. How do we address these issues so that we can jointly do this R&D, innovation capacity, commercialization and platform development, so that we then extend and broaden the horizons. How do we organize this innovation collaboration? And there, usually the results are regional and global development programs, not only supporting the growth of SMEs, but actually try to change the mindset within the entrepreneurial communities to understand that they should be planning and developing their businesses as born global companies. And then, just instead of making real estate investments and build nice buildings for science and technology parks and incubators, we actually move on and start talking about the way how do we coordinate these hubs and platforms for the actual collaboration. So these are kind of the theoretical things. And what we know now, what is happening in the world. These things are actually challenging many of the local development thinkers. The idea is that when we are interested in real, true participation, for example, to the European level innovation collaboration, it means that in the future, these platforms need to address the ideas of value, network, advantage, and competition. They should embrace some kind of an open innovation model because the world is quite borderless and very well connected. It is quite a complicated task in the sense that all our environmental conditions are in a continuous change, so we need to scan and find the drivers, how do we participate and what do we do together. We have to be able to scale this whole system with different kinds of virtual tools, typically internet and different kinds of modifications to that. It's all a question about how we manage partnerships within the ecosystem itself and between the different actors around this ecosystem. So in a sense, we are talking about ability to connect talent, networks, clusters, and processes. And this is the reality how the innovation ecosystem level and innovation hub collaboration is organized nowadays. So necessarily kind of a conclusion out of this is that the development focus is shifting to managing innovation partnerships and networks. Not talking only about technological competencies and interdisciplinary studies and excellence in research, but to complement this strong basis with the idea how do we actually engage in managing these partnerships and networks. Now that I have been told that you have this plan here in Slovenia, that you would like to walk this path, that you are interested in this discussion and in these topics, the idea is then that following all those rather theoretical background studies that I just presented to you, we need to be very focused in realizing what are the key ingredients what we need when we start building this Slovenian Innovation Hub. To our understanding, successful hubs must include strong basis of local know-how and pool of talent, clear target to achieve international best practice. Actors should aim for global region goals, not only something that is solved here in Slovenia, but at least minimum the European context, if not even broader. While you are developing your own hub, or whoever is developing their hub, they should be all the time ready to look for different kinds of networking relationships with other top-runner environments, because there is a possibility for good practice transfer. And of course, access to continuous flow of attractive players. Are these individuals or organizations? Are they, for example, an innovation center in Slovenia connecting with another one in another country? Or are they science parks? Are they some kind of technology platforms which should be connected to other technology platform organizations and so on? So in this sense, it's all about collaboration in global context. So this is kind of like an introduction to what we are doing every day with our clients. And if we then take this as given, that okay, let's accept the fact that knowledge and know-how and knowledge transfer and commercialization of excellent research results is actually a tool or mechanism that will boost our national economy here in Slovenia. And if we believe that this relatively complex issue needs to be packaged in a way, all these issues at the same time, we come and we propose one type of a framework that could be taken into use to this kind of a discussion. So, at Hub Concepts, we start our discussion usually from this kind of an idea So the idea is that when we want to develop an innovation hub, in any country and in any context, usually what happens is that we start from relatively uncoordinated innovative activities, and our goal is to be globally attractive innovation hub. And what happens is that decision makers are interested in one of the two development directions, depending on their organizational interests. If they are real estate companies, they are very much interested in this. But also many decision makers, they can easily relate to the idea that we need to build physical environment for this innovation to take place. And infrastructure development is kind of an easy path, an easy first step to take. And as a result, we get parks and campuses and incubators and platforms. There is usually another interest group which is very much interested in the way how we organize the innovation collaboration. And many times they use clusters as a kind of a key tool, how they bring different actors from different sectors together. As a result, we get some kind of an innovation cluster program, which can be immensely beneficial for the development of the country or the region. What we at Hub Concepts we are trying to say and advocate is that we would like to see the vectors of these two development directions to go to the same direction. We should somehow be able to combine the interests of excellent master planning and grand master planning of these environments and these ways to organize these incubators and platforms and combine them to these cluster activities so that different stakeholders would be truly interested in participating in these actions. And if we claim, if these two directions can be put towards the same direction, we get these globally attractive innovation hubs. For this, it is important to kind of define what is globally attractive innovation hub. This is first picture related to our framework and model we are using. But before going into the details of the picture itself, the message here is that there is some kind of a relatively objective level that you have to reach when you make this claim that I am globally attractive. And in this picture, private sector is up here, public sector is here, and different kinds of public-private partnerships are here, and we just draw a line somewhere. We take this kind of a theoretical assumption that all private companies want to do global business and be successful and make big profits and all that kind of thing. So the broader the market is, the better and all that. So we give them this kind of benefit of doubt and say, fine, let's draw a line there and say that they are planning to do global business. But when they're thinking about regional innovation hubs and ecosystems, we have to realize that there are many elements that build this ecosystem hub, and every and each one of these elements needs to be planned and implemented in a way that they also reach this relatively objective way of doing this. So just giving some examples, for example, physical infrastructures. There are certain ways to build a science and technology park or university campus that we all know that will induce innovation activities. So if we don't reach that level, it's going to be rather difficult to build the hub. Or we can say that, yeah, we can have quite interesting industry cluster where the main industry leading companies are organizing subcontracting value chains to support their good business. But if we want to build a region, we have to realize that these clusters should actually involve different stakeholders from private sector and public sector and research institutes, so that we should bring all of them together to reach this level. So the idea is that global innovation hub targets should all be planned to be actually reaching the global targets. And in this book that we wrote, we are describing to our best knowledge what do we think that is the global best practice in each one of these elements. We take this this thinking forward, and this is now, I stopped a longer time in this one picture because this is our basic framework, which was already implied in an earlier slide. So the idea is that at Hub Concepts we came to this realization that if it is so that there are thousands of science and technology parks and tens of thousands of university campuses and thousands of incubators and so on and so on, why it is so that it is so difficult to make them work so that the actual results come out? And we started to list, first of all, just to make a list of all the organizations that are needed in this kind of a hub. And then we started to list development targets of all of those organizations. Then we started to read innovation policy documents and all that. And suddenly we realized that it is actually quite a complex system that you have to build and manage when you are developing these hubs. And we came to this kind of realization that a regional innovation hub stands on national or regional innovation policy platform, which provides certain key framework conditions for these hubs to be developed. And then we need built infrastructures and services, different kinds of educational elements, research and development clusters, different kinds of technical test environments and technology platforms and others. We need incubation environments and 3 different kinds of companies: early startups, growth SMEs, and big anchors. Industry-leading companies which are doing this. And typically when somebody starts relatively loose discussion about an innovation hub, they quite often refer to a campus or science park. And typically they are talking about issues that are somewhere here in this picture. The realization that this complex system requires public policy-driven decision-making processes to come to the same direction. And then it requires the private sector and company-driven activities to brought into the same hub. And then these 2 parties, private sector and public sector, have to come together in the middle to do different kinds of public-private partnership arrangements. Suddenly we are in the middle of total management chaos. When we came up with this framework, we were first kind of like thinking that, is this really this complex? And we were hoping for quite a long time to take off some elements here. And we have been now having discussions for the last 5 years with different actors that do you agree that we need all these elements for Innovation Hub? And after some discussion with whoever it has been, they have, for example, said, no, we don't need clusters, take them out, and we can still have a relative, like strong hub. Or, no, we don't need these test environments or these technology platforms, we can leave them out and let's build the hub. After some certain kind of discussion, people start making references to these things again. And that's why we came to this conclusion that actually we need all these elements to be somehow planned, and we have to agree together that these are the ingredients for the plan. Actually, it is more important in this picture to realize that these 10 elements exist in almost any hub and all that, but these 3 circles behind here are actually dictating the successfulness or possibilities of the success of this kind of hub. Depending on the culture, depending on the political system, depending on the national innovation policy framework, funding programs, and so on, in every country these circles are totally different. Just for the argument's sake, we have been drawing them like this. But already today, earlier during the lunchtime, somebody asked how do you see these circles in different countries? And we give usually this example that, let's take an example from China and think about their political system and how it is being organized and how the political party is getting involved in quite many things in that country. We say that in China, this lowest circle goes to on top of the whole thing. Basically, one political party is deciding the names of the daughters of the big companies, and so on and so on and so on. While then we go to the classical capitalist representative Silicon Valley, and we study them, what they do there. And we realize that many industry-leading companies are actually coming to this public sector sphere and engaged in continuous dialogue with schools, city developers, R&D actors, and tell them, please do these things because my business will be stronger in the future. Two worlds are kind of like extremes in the sense that in American system probably the private industry is leading this development of innovation hubs, while in China it is probably then the political party who decides this. So this was kind of like our starting point. Okay, We need all these elements. We have tested this over and over again. It seems to be that all these elements are needed. Then we realize that there are two key parties, public sector and private sector, that has to become together and understand how this is done. And typically, they try to organize their collaboration in some form of public-private partnerships. And we come to this kind of a realization that when we are developing an innovation hub, we would like to see combinations of different activities. And we say that if we are doing the development process of a hub in a concise, proper way and really target-oriented, we believe that we need a combination of first-class master plans, fourth-class master plans, typically shown something like this, and then innovation hub concepts, using this model to do this actual concept development and planning how this system should be managed, how this system should be facilitated, orchestrated, and so on, so that we would get these results, so that this concept would work on this master plan, and this master plan would benefit from this concept and this hub. Then we take this as kind of like a starting point in all this discussion to the hubs. And what we did, we then went and tested this, even for our book. In our book, we have 7 case studies that where we tested how the global best run environments did this, and we describe these cases in this book. And we claim that by this kind of a combination, what do we gain? What do we gain when we are combining the master planning and the concept planning and bringing together the public and private sector actors on these joint hubs? First of all, using these kinds of tools like this framework and particular activities in development of these hubs, we believe that there is a chance that we get a common terminology for all innovation actors. So people start using the same language, which facilitates then the discussion on drafting the shared vision and value proposals. Because we have to realize that this triangle here, this is full of organizations and full of people. This is essentially people's pyramid. We need to make sure that all of those people who are involved, they know what they are talking about. And there are lots of decision makers on different levels. These decision makers should be able to identify those 3 kinds of frameworks, the critical development targets. How do we move forward? This comprehensive approach also provides guidelines. How do we do this joint development in practice, in everyday life? It supports value-added cross-sectoral innovation processes, and it promotes shared innovation activities and platforms. As a result, we have witnessed this in many, many projects during these last 5 years, that the concrete results are like this. First of all, these hubs, they improve the conditions for joint R&D activities, public and private, or different actors, either in public sector or private sector. They support the business expansion. And finally, they improve the different outcomes for the society and improves the quality of life for local people. So now I will just very briefly show you those 7 case studies that we have. And again, the idea is not to go into details what they are. The idea is that we selected these 7 based on non-very academic way of selection. But we believe that this is quite a representative group of global top-running environments, in a sense that it's quite rare that somebody would dispute that Silicon Valley is good innovation hub, or research trial park, also the articles of Cambridge and all that. So we wanted to start from this, that okay, these are good, but they are from different cultures, they are from different continents, they use different language, they have totally different political environment, they have totally different national economical structures. So we wanted to test that can we use this relatively simple framework, this triangle model, and dig out how these actually were developed and what are the key factors explaining why they are successful or not. And we turned this framework into the evaluation tool. So what we decided to do, I will spend a little more time with this data. This is South Korean case, their #1 innovation hub in the center of South Korea. We decided that let's use this triangle model and create a set of key questions that we can use. And let's say that on the right-hand side in this triangle, there is a situation where the known global best practices are in full use, representing then the idea that how mature these actors in their job are in using these tools for their own benefit, how successfully they have been able to take the global best practices to help them to develop their own hub there in South Korea. And this right-hand side here, it's, well, we would say that it's rather difficult to get 100 points, because then it means that you are quite exceptional in understanding everything what's going on and then being able to get all the decision makers from public and private sector to agree and all that kind of thing. So we started with different sets of questions to analyze this. And here is our best interpretation, what is the status of Daejeon in South Korea. So we say there that let's take, for example, national and regional innovation policy. So our questions are related then to the idea that not that is Korea having a good national innovation policy, or is this Daejeon region, do they have good innovation strategy? That is not the question. The question is, there is a policy, there are funding mechanisms, there are national technology programs, and so on and so on and so on. So how good these combined actors are in taking the full benefit of that given policy framework and foundation for them. And in here, first of all, they were able to convince the government that when the new innovation policy in around 1990-something was set up in South Korea and different policies were done, that all the major research institutes of that country were co-located to Daejeon. I don't know if you have visited this place. I have visited a few times, and I have visited Korea much more times. From my personal point of view, total nonsense. It's in the middle of Korean peninsula, there's nothing in there. But it's a political decision-making process that it's easy to put it there because then it's not threatening anybody. And let's put it there because it geographically is central location. And let's put it there because the land is cheap. And because in our country we can decide that we will move our national research institutes, we will just move them there. And all that kind of thing. So in this sense, personally I don't like very much of the location itself. But all these actors in this system, they were truly super quality successful in taking the full benefit of this policy framework and all the tools and funding tools and all that for their benefit, and they created amazing innovation out there. The starting point was totally hopeless. And if you now go there and visit, it is really, truly an amazing place. So this measure here is measuring that how well we play the game, how mature this hub is in using these kinds of things. So, just a very brief introduction where this 90 comes from. And in a similar way, we were analyzing different kinds of things. And if you read those 20 pages related to data, you realize where these numbers come from. So this is one starting point. We are able to use this tool to study, analyze, any scale. In Finland, we have so far profiled 8 of the 10 biggest city regions using these tools and helping them to develop their regional innovation policies forward. The smallest city being 70,000 people. But we are also using the same tool, for example, in Hong Kong. We are using the same tool in Taiwan, in Japan, and so on and so on. And the scale can be anything from the 200,000 people to 1 million plus cities. Still, we can use the same framework regardless of the scale. Sometimes our clients say that we have only energy industry in our city. We don't have any other industries and all that kind of thing. So actually, we should study this only from the energy cluster point of view. We can use the same model for all of these things. Numbers here are very subjective. I take this disclaimer in front of this academic audience. We have had many times discussions that what are you measuring? Are you measuring quantitative? Are you making quantitative analysis? What kind of data sets you are collecting? How you can make these claims? We are also interested in quantitative data. But quantitative data is actually not explaining very well the actual functionalities of these hubs. We have to change the set of questions after we read the quantitative data. For example, in one small city in Finland, they have one incubation center. And in next case, Shanghai, Pudong, Zhangjiang Tech Park, they have 19 incubators. In this small city in Finland, they have 25 incubatees. In this park, they have probably somewhere between 1,500 to 2,000 incubatees. And if you would then just say that, let's compare these two places, who wins? Quantitative analysis would immediately say that these guys are better. But it may be so that one incubation center with those 25 incubatees are much better in actually taking those 25 companies to be more global companies, while most of these incubation centers here do not provide those results. So in this sense, the numbers and the questions behind these pyramid triangles and these here, they vary a lot. But again here, the key point is not actually to compare these triangles to each other. The key point is that each one of them is unique, dependent on local conditions. And I will just now skip all 7 of them. Please bear in mind that all of these are globally renowned, excellent sites. And if you look at their profiles, they are totally different. How these numbers are jumping all around these pictures. We all know them as globally leading, and we all know them as places that we should benchmark. We look at them and we admire them for what they have done, and rightfully so. They are all very good. But our message is that with this framework and with this kind of an approach where we try to analyze and look at each individual case as a unique kind of a representation of the successfulness of taking into use the global best practices and develop in that context. So the idea, well, that was too complicated. The idea is that we use these numbers to provide elements for discussion and let the decision makers to have and use these numbers and decide what they want to do next. This is only like kind of like a one-time analysis, and it just gives us a starting point. Then what we do with all of these actors, and like we did in the book, then we start analyzing ideas like, for example, with this profile and all the activities that are happening in their job, how well they are able to reach the global attractiveness level. Are they regionally and locally important, or nationally important, or globally important? And where you are on this continuum, it's good. Because the idea is that this whole system can be regionally super important for the national economy, for example. But it doesn't necessarily mean that those things, what they do in their job, would be globally best practice and people should actually try to go and copy them. Or it doesn't tell have they been able to use, like you see also how these jump these spots, they jump around those continuums in the same way. We all know them as interesting and good models, but as you can see, many of them, they don't actually represent global best practice, or they have not risen to the level that they are taking the lead and others should follow. In the same way, we are analyzing them as a global hub, with these different kinds of elements, what management structures they have, how do they organize, what kind of a key performance criteria they have, and all that kind of thing. And we are kind of testing that are they using most of the elements, or are they just from the starting line to become as a global hub and following those principles. And again, you can see that they are jumping everywhere. And then hub management. This is the issue related to this idea that many times when we are talking about these innovation hubs, and let's take the original model there, this one. People say that, okay, we are talking about innovation ecosystems. We are talking about very, very complex systems. Can you give any kind of a direction? Because in a biological sense, ecosystems are self-organizing things, so why would you mingle with this? We know that the survival of the fittest happens and all that kind of thing. From hub concept's point of view, we belong to different school of thought. We accept the fact that these are ecosystems and you cannot control them, and you cannot decide the end game for them. But we believe that by different kinds of orchestration and facilitation, tools and mechanisms in place, you can try to influence this whole group of organizations and people to work together to the direction which will give us better innovation outcomes. And for this, when we go to these case studies, we are saying to them that if you are managing or orchestrating or facilitating your hub, are you using those available tools that we have through research, academic research even recognized? Are you using those tools? Are you kind of like well-developed hub management status, or are you just emerging and still learning how to do this? And again, you can see these are jumping all over the place. So what do we then say? The key messages are, we believe that innovation hubs can be tools for economic growth and boosting national economies. This is the first message. The second message is, we know that it's super complicated. You need to have this model, or any model of your choosing, to address the issue that hubs are very complex systems, where you need to combine top research, top knowledge and know-how, different kinds of management processes, to the business interests, and engage in solving societal issues or social challenges. The next point is that we don't believe in self-organizing systems. We don't believe that this happens by accident. And if you leave these just to develop by themselves, results have not been very good. So you should engage in some kind of an orchestration of these systems. And now we are, of course, saying that this hub concepts framework could be one of those tools that could be used in for example, in Slovenia, in planning and managing this innovation hub that is now under planning. So these are the things what we have been studying globally. So we know more or less global best practice in each one of these 10 elements. We know how to measure the effectiveness of the use of different tools in each one of these layers. We have a relatively big database on different cases, well, relatively big. Let's say we have about 30 to 40 cases where we have used this model, but we have about 300 cases which have been studied and benchmarked before using all this model. And we engage in turning theory into practice with our clients. And now I'll just very briefly give you 4 examples what we have been doing during the last 5 years. Most of you are probably well aware of the fact that the #1 innovation hub in Finland is in Otaniemi in Espoo metropolitan region in Helsinki. And in this picture, if you look this dark area behind there, that's where the university is, and that's where the national research institutes are. And these are our major company headquarters, both domestic and regional headquarters for foreign companies in Scandinavia or Nordic countries. There are a couple of pictures here. They have a plan to build new residential complex here, and they are building kind of like a new kind of a co-innovation tower here where all these actors will come together. Why we have been interested in this Otaniemi case is that we are witnessing kind of a new development trend globally where innovation hubs are typically embedded into urban environments in big cities. There is now very much dialogue going on that smart cities, eco-cities, and these kind of new urban developments are taking place everywhere. And we are super interested in this development because if the decision makers are not careful, they are going to make the same mistake with smart cities what they did with technology parks, where they are interested in a combination of top engineering know-how to build these cities, but they don't plan the reason for the city to exist. And we are witnessing this already in China and India and some other countries that they build whole cities and nobody wants to live there. Because there is absolutely no reason, no concept, no jobs and so whatsoever in those cities. And we are now in the middle of that kind of a transformation process in Finland. This whole place, before those 4 buildings are not there, remember now. This whole place was built in the middle of nowhere outside of an urban structure. It was built on a former kind of a farm field plus garbage dump, where the land was as cheap as possible and all that kind of thing. As a result, this area is living every day between 8 to 5. And outside of that time, and every summer and all that, nobody is here. This is empty. It's a total waste of all the innovation capacity in this area if it would continue on this development path. Everything is changing in 2 years' time. Helsinki subway system will be extended to Espoo, and there will be 3 new stations, one in here, one in there, and one in there. And for the first time, this whole area will be connected to urban, suburban development processes. Because of this, this whole area is full of activities. People are building residential buildings, they are building office buildings, they are building new buildings to the university. You probably know that a few years back, many Finnish universities merged. So 3 top universities in Helsinki region: Helsinki University of Technology, University of Art and Design Helsinki, and Helsinki Business School. They actually gave up their independence and they merged, and now they're called Aalto University. And Business School and University of Art and Design, they were located in city center of Helsinki, and now they all moved here. So it means that they are bringing these very highly ranked university actors from the same campus. They are using different kinds of national policy instruments to boost national research institute collaboration with those universities. They are helping these private companies to build physical connection which was never there before. There were roads running here and there and all that. Nobody could walk here. You had to take a car. Now they are putting all these roads to tunnels, and they are building on top of those covered roads. They are building walkways. This becomes like a super campus. But it will be also become a part of normal city structure and urban structure, with all the services and residence areas and all that kind of thing. And as hub concepts, we've been working with the real estate companies and the university and many of these companies to build now this concept how they should reorganize the collaboration for this hub in the future. Last 3 years, and still continuing all the time, helping them to combine the city development processes and university development processes and all that. In my hometown, Oulu, which is 600 kilometers north from Helsinki, we have been working with topics and issues related to healthcare. This is Oulu University Hospital. And around this, all this area is something that is called Medipolis. And the idea is that in this one concentration, we will now have skills training institutes, adult education institutes, buildings for companies to develop different kinds of solutions in this hospital environment. The hospital is going through 500 million euro renovation, and during this process, many of the new technologies that these companies are being developing are being tested and taken into use in this hospital. Processes inside this hospital are changed, and so on and so on and so on. We're working together with them to strengthen this Medipolis concept and bring together different actors on the same kind of a hub management. They call it Oulu Innovation Alliance, where different actors come together to work and find out these ways for public-private partnerships and using this infrastructure upgrades for the benefit of private industry and education and so on and so on. Then I heard today about automotive industry in Slovenia, or at least automotive parts and all that kind of thing. So by accident I chose already earlier this case here. This is of course out of Europe, but yeah, in Thailand. Our client was the biggest company in Thailand, publicly listed, Amada Group. It's one of the most successful in the country. It's owner of Vikram Kromanik. It's one of the 40 most influential decision makers in Asia. Essentially what they're doing, they are land developers. They buy rice fields and they build all the infrastructure and urban infrastructure on those rice fields. And then they build industrial parks. So over time, Amada has been able to attract over 600 companies to set up their factories on Amada's land. So together, Amada and those companies, they provide about 7 to 8% of gross domestic product of Thailand. So what is this actor doing? They develop land, they sell and lease it out, and together with many different companies, they provide them location service, plus all the utilities, energy, water, waste management, and all that kind of thing. So, pretty good business. Vietnam, Myanmar, Cambodia, all developing fast and coming with the same game. You see here, there is a company, Japan Research Institute Limited. It's one of the biggest consulting companies in Japan. And together with JRI and Hub Concepts, we were approached by Amada saying that on Amada's land, 60% of clients are Japanese. 3 automotive makers, Toyota, Mitsubishi, and Honda, they have replicated the Japanese automotive value chain on Amada's land in Thailand. And now, there is a risk that they will move out if we don't provide them value-added services. Can you help us? And together with these Japanese consultants who are very capable in infrastructure development, they make the plans for infrastructure, we make the plans for industry cluster development and innovation hub development for Amada, so that they can have this kind of plan to build Amada Science City in the middle of their own land, in the middle of all those hundreds and hundreds of factories, where they start providing to this private industry reason to stay. And we did lots of interviews with Japanese companies related to this, and during this project, all those 3 automotive makers told us the same story. In the future, automotive makers have 2 main issues that they are interested in. First, they want to have manufacturing facilities designed especially for regional models, and research and development co-located. They don't believe anymore that they should be located here and there. And because of this, they liked this project proposal that we made them. I don't believe that it is a result, but by accident at the same time. All 3 big automakers, they moved their regional headquarters from Singapore to Bangkok. And it's not an easy thing for Honda to decide to leave Singapore and move to Bangkok. But that's what they did, because they see that in the future, the manufacturing site is the key place where they should go. They cannot move manufacturing sites from Thailand to Singapore. So that's why they have to do it the other way. So here we were again working together with this kind of industrial site developments and all that kind of thing. And finally, I heard today from Tamara that in your beautiful country you have chances for promoting tourism through spas and different kinds of health services and all that kind of thing. And there are some kind of ideas and preliminary plans that Slovenia could be some kind of health tourism destination in the future. Is in some sense already kind of thing. So again, by accident, I didn't know this before today. We were in Korea for 1.5 years ago. National government they have a plan. Prime Minister's office has decided that on the island of Jeju, they're going to build healthcare town. Because Koreans want to come to the same thing. They want to be health destination. And they will check what is happening in Dubai, and what is happening in Thailand, and what is happening in India, and what is happening in China, and so on and so on. And they realize that this is one good chance and one good market. And they have all this master plan done. this island, it's really, really beautiful, like amazing holiday destination, and they have every year almost 10 million tourists visiting on this island, and it's the only place outside of China where Chinese can travel without visa. And because of this, out of those 10 million, almost 2 million are Chinese. So they don't want to take any kind of a risk that those tourists will not come there anymore. So if they want to develop new industries on this island, all the industries that they can develop has to be, they have to find industries that are not threatening the basic tourism industry and the beauty of nature and all that kind of thing. So they chose 3 things. They chose education, health, and clean energy. And another project, we didn't work on that. They have an education city there, and they have been able to attract already 5 universities and schools and all that on that island. And in this, so they have this plan, and they were able to negotiate with Chinese, Shanghai Greenland Group. The Chinese bought 70% of this land. Basically, they bought this land. 70% of this land Chinese bought, just based on this plan, this one picture, and decided to make a total investment of $20 billion on this plan. And during this time, we were contacted by them because they have this idea that they are more or less on the right track. That they have this sense that, okay, we know that health is a big thing and we want to do this, and this is a new general hospital and there is a clinic street here, so the best equipment for cancer treatment will be located here, and all the beauty like salons where they will do plastic surgery and all that will be located here. They have all the medical related issues and it's well done. There is a building here, city here, and so on and so on. There will be 5-star hotel with casinos and all that kind of thing, and residential areas for people who want to have their second house there and all that kind of thing. And they were all the time talking about this idea that this is a competing plan to Dubai. And if you look at the Dubai, what happens is that essentially it is for sick people. So the idea is that if you are sick, if you need to have a hip replacement, or if you need to have lengthy treatment for some chronic disease and all that, you could come here. You could be treated in these first-class health facilities, but then you could also live here all those 6 months when you are recuperating and all that kind of thing. So, good idea for healthy people. This is not providing very much, because if you are a healthy person and you come here and you only see sick people all the time, why would you come here? Right? And we started to talk with them. What about this healthy people market is bigger than sick people market? And they said, okay, it makes sense, come and work with us. And in the end, we came with this kind of a conclusion that they need 4 complementing clusters, 4 complementing industry clusters on this development. Fine, the Chinese will lead it, but who will then make sure that this will be one of the leading healthcare towns in the world? Are those who make sure that those clusters are operating. And the clusters were there, of course, the health related, like the sick people need to be treated. Then there needs to be this wellness cluster. Oh, there's some kind of a system that when the time is up, this goes off. So there's this system that for healthy people we will do this. And for this, they included this plan everything related to spas and all that kind of thing. But then we also introduced them the idea that since Korea is quite a big country in sports, football, baseball, golf, and so on and so on and so on, they have a domestic professional league for most of these sports. Why don't they add on this plan every possible institute, training programs, coaching programs, train for the coaching programs and all that kind of thing, and bring all the professional sports teams to spend every year a few weeks here. That would be a great attraction element for the tourists. You can live in this building and Tiger Woods and Roy McIlroy and others go to these golf resorts to play, and you can check what they're doing, all that kind of thing. Why not sports? And then we said that because we learned during this project that they are actually quite good in Jeju in functional food. So all these three groups, sick people, healthy conscious people, and sports people, they're crazy for food. They all the time talk about nutrition. So if it is true, like this, there is clinical proof for that. If it is true that on this island they have certain ingredients in their local food, and they have a capability to use different processes to develop new types of foods for people who are in kind of these special groups, why don't they add that one there as well? And in the end, we made them a plan for these 4 complementing industry clusters, how they're being organized, managed, who is doing what, key priorities, and so on and so on and so on. So essentially, these 4 examples that I have shown you are just kind of like just to give you some food for thought, that when we are talking about innovation hubs in practice, we start to talk about these kinds of issues. And if we want to make sure that the innovation hubs are somehow successful and create new innovative outcomes, as in all of these projects, private sector is very strongly involved because they see this innovation hub as a mechanism to do better business. So now that you are going to engage more strongly in this development here in Slovenia for this innovation hub, some of these examples will be kind of like starting points for you. How do you organize? What are your targets? How do you make the industry involved and all that kind of thing, so that this will be somehow make it successful. So then, last slide as a summary. What I've been talking today is that when we develop these innovation hubs, we are very much promoting and we try to kind of like advocate the idea that please try to take relatively comprehensive approach to these issues. Don't take the low road and just plan part of it. And what it means then, there are 4 key elements that needs to be addressed. First of all, there should be systemic ecosystem level master plan. So all these different parties should know what they do. Combination of infrastructure and innovation ecosystem elements. Shared vision, joint policies and common targets. And those abbreviations there, they refer to our cases in our book. That if you want to check to our understanding global best practice, how you do ecosystem level master planning, check what they did in Shanghai or what did they do in Research Triangle Park in North Carolina when they planned their own hubs and all that. Then there is a clear need for the use of empowered core hub organizations. So the idea is that this doesn't happen by itself. You need to have professional management to make this reality. One party should take over the ecosystem level orchestration. And we know that it's difficult, it's always difficult, even in one city, let alone in one country. That who could be this one party? And what about the others? Are they willing to give a mandate to this one party to actually do this? It's not an easy thing, but this one party then have this responsibility that the whole triangle is well, and facilitates and builds value networks and channels resources, not necessarily making decisions on resources, but at least making recommendations what kind of resources are needed and where they should be put. Then we should be very careful in how do we manage the advanced public-private partnerships. What are the mechanisms for regional networking and communication, and how do we advocate the advanced business development platform. So the idea is private industry is only participating if they see this as better business. Not necessarily the hub itself, but the outcomes of the hub have to have a direct connection to the private sector interests, and usually it means bigger profits. Let's not fool ourselves. They don't participate otherwise. And then extensions of strategic alliances. I've heard today also already references to neighboring countries, similar kinds of hubs, or different kinds of hubs which could be connected. I've heard about science parks or university campuses or your universities here, how they could be doing collaboration and all that, so that these strategic alliances could combine and complement talent and resources within the given networks. And then we can scale up with strategic partnerships. So the idea is that if you do this alone and you spend there, I don't know, anything between 1 to 5 years developing your own hub without engaging early on in these partnerships, then it may be so that the complementarities are difficult in the later stage. But if you do this from early on, then there is a possibility for scaling up your own things here with these alliances. So this is what we do and how do we see the world of innovation hubs. Quite a lot in a little bit more than an hour, almost 1.5. I'm sorry to take this long, but this may be the best chance to meet all of you in the same room, and that's why I think that it was a privilege to come and tell you my thoughts about innovation hubs. Thank you very much.